Hello and welcome to Walking Through Advent with us.
The hashtag Holy Hackets.
And also some other brilliant people that are going to be contributing as we go through. This is our attempt at a mini-series, really, at trying to be creative, looking at the Christmas story through the lens of 21st century characters. It just feels really important that as Christians we share our faith stories, share our experiences of life with one another. And so that's really what we're going to be doing through Advent.
So during this series, we're going to be looking at 5 different characters. We're looking at Mary, at Joseph, at the shepherds, at King Herod, boo hiss, and at the Magi, and thinking about some of the people in our 21st century world that might relate to something of their stories. As we do this, we don't just want it to be our special guest stories that we hear, but we also want to hear from all of you. So if you feel able and comfortable to, we'd love you to share some of your stories and experiences in the comments during or after the video.
I don't know about all of you, but 2020 didn't really go the way that we thought it was going to be. We've had to be creative and reimagine and rethink all sorts of things for this year, and Advent feels like one of them. But actually, we feel a bit like sometimes we rush through Advent so quickly. We're so focused on Christmas Day, on planning dinner, who's coming to dinner, of course, this year, which bubble will we be in? Thinking about presents, like Jez is so hard to buy for. And already thinking about decorating the Christmas tree. We bought our decorations weeks ago, which is really bad. So really this year, this series is a time to focus, to breathe, to watch and to wait through Advent together.
And so, as we watch and engage with these stories together, as we explore some of those questions, let's be challenged, encouraged, and transformed by the God who encounters us through the incarnation of Jesus Christ, our Saviour.
Last week, we were challenged by asking who and what do we value in our communities and society. Today, we're going to be challenged by the story of King Herod and his way of leading rather than serving. Today we have Tim Pickstone, the Mayor of Bury, and Barbara Beeley, the Chairperson of Saddleworth Parish Council, sharing their experiences of leadership and what it means to serve their communities in such a time as this.
In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men, and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage."
So my name's Tim Pickstone. This year I'm lucky enough to be the Mayor of Bury. So I guess being the Mayor is in its traditional sense, which it's an honorary position that every year councillors choose one of themselves to be the Mayor. And normally you have to have been a councillor for a few years to get chosen. So I've actually served as a councillor in Prestwich for over 20 years now. And so eventually it becomes your turn, I guess, if you want it. I did think about whether it was something I wanted to do, but my conclusion was quite quickly that if you get the opportunity to have such an honour given to you, I guess, then it's really wrong to turn that down, and that you should make the most of the opportunities that get given you in life, I guess. So, I mean, at the moment, it's a difficult time, isn't it? So the current situation this year is not one that was over by summer and not one that was over by Christmas, as I think lots of people hoped, isn't it? And so it is quite difficult to find hope, especially because even people in positions of leadership are human beings as well, and I suspect the whole country is in not as good a place as it in our heads, I guess, than we would normally be, and that I think extends to everybody. I suppose for me, it's really lovely to see hope where people are looking out for each other. And so there's been some amazing stories of people just looking out for their neighbours, helping people that they've never met before previously. People, have been drawn to causes, like, for example, I don't know, free school meals at half term. Is not something that many people would have been drawn to, but all of a sudden this is something that people are thinking about. So that gives me hope. I hope it's not short term. Something, for example, childhood poverty is not something that's going to go away even when coronavirus goes away, is it? So I think there is hope, but I think it's also, I very much hope that the things that we've seen that are good last rather than are temporary.
That's my hope. Can you see it? Is it clear? That's my granddaughter at about the age of 7 at a Chris Dingle service and her local church from her infant school. And I think the light and so on that it has caught that picture just gives you that one sense of wonderment and hope. And incidentally, her middle name is Hope as well. Hope is, again, family, but the next generation and the grandchildren, so it's the second generation. This is the one I found difficult because I thought, right, I'll look up what it says about leadership, a definition of leadership. After reading about 10 different ones, I thought, give up, Barbara. It's not good, that. Leader, I don't see myself, you see, as a leader. When you're a teacher, you help those children to realize their dreams or to get along the pathway towards those dreams. And it's not so much leader as a facilitator in some ways. So, and it's important that you encourage and so on. I mean, I can't see myself ever being a dictator. I mean, even now as chair of the parish council, I liked, if we've got a serious issue to discuss, I like to canvass everybody's point of view and try and come to a consensus of opinion, not the confrontational type, but I will stand my ground if I have to. So yeah, it's a difficult one to define as leadership. It just sort of happens sometimes. You end up as somebody. And I think sometimes you grow into the role.
I think it's a privilege. I think, especially being elected, it's a real honour, essentially, to be chosen by your neighbours, isn't it? Because that's what a local election is. It's your neighbours choosing you over 3 or 4 other people. So that happening is a real privilege. I think it's something not to be taken for granted. So I'm very much of the view that that trust that's been put into you by people is something that you need to work on and that you mustn't let people down. So I'm very much of the belief that winning an election is only the beginning of the hard work, if that makes sense, not time for a rest, which is the worst of being a politician, I suppose. So I think in general it's a real privilege, but there's also so much to be done. So I think there's a responsibility as well. So there's a responsibility, I suppose, to ideally to leave the area that you represent in a better place than it was when you started in your leadership role, which is not always easy, because there's lots of barriers and challenges in the way. But theoretically, if there are things that you can point to that you've achieved, then that's really good.
The parish runs on a precept and a grant, which have been significantly cut in the last last few years. So we haven't the funds to do as much as we would like to do to support local groups. Oh, but I have found, that some groups will come to you and say, look, we'd like to do this. How about like allotments? And we did, the district partnership, when I was chair, put in some money, and the parish did, to establish the allotments. But I found that if there is a group with an idea like that, quite often it is pointing them in the right direction, giving them the skills to do it themselves, basically, helping them to get up and running, and then say, right, off you go, run with it. And quite often that works.
Yes, and I think increasingly so, if that makes sense. So I think especially the social media and 24-hour news cycle world that we live in is one where people are very quick to be angry at people and quick to criticize, and people who have elected office, for some, are sort of open season for criticism. Which is, it's not always justified, and obviously people are human beings, aren't they? So I know, colleagues of mine in different parts of the country who are absolutely excellent counsellors, just don't want to carry on because they can't deal with the rubbish that gets thrown at them on social media and by people who know no bounds. So that's an increasing issue, actually. And I'm not sure what the immediate solution is, but it is a worry, because theoretically anybody from whatever walk of life should be able to come forward and be be one to be elected as a leader. I think the first thing is leadership at difficult times is stressful. So it's sometimes a fairly lonely place. Because there's lots of difficult choices or decisions that need to be made, or people have demands on you that are not easy to answer. So I suppose leadership's no different to any other walk of life. So in a difficult time, it's more difficult, I guess. I suppose the challenge is living up to people's expectations, and trying to help people through a difficult time. When also the time is difficult for you as well, if that makes sense. So there's again, our leaders are humans. Difficult.
Well, this year has been very difficult. It's a really good example. I was supposed to take over as chair in May with a large ceremony and all the rest of it. Nothing of that happened. Councillor Curley had to stay on as chair until September, but he couldn't do a full year. So I quietly took over on the 1st of September. Since then, I have been, I haven't had what people would see as the nice side of being chair, like going out to lunch and so on. But I've had to deal with various problems and so on. We've had a new clerk, and that always changes stuff, always has to be dealt with. And some people bat things our direction which aren't really to do with the parish council, or denigrate the parish council, so you have to deal with that as well. So it's basically taking each day or each week as it comes at the moment, hoping that life will get better. Thinking back to my days on the borough, there were probably more examples of such a thing. And when Tom was the councillor as well, discuss it, look at all the pros and cons, sleep on it, I find is a really good one. I mean, these questions have been mulling around in my brain for the last fortnight.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. My brain, it just gets on with it, in the background. And just when you've done that, you make you weigh up the best possible, possible decisions you could make. Look at the pros and cons, what you've decided while you've been sleeping, and go with it. If it goes wrong, hold your hands up and say, sorry, got that one wrong. There's no point in, I have never tried in all my years as a counsellor or a parish counsellor, tried to blag, as it were, my way out of something. If I'm wrong, I'll hold my hands up and say, yeah, I'm wrong, I got that one wrong. So I think honesty, even if the decision that's made isn't very palatable to somebody else, at least honesty will make them understand why you made that decision. Well, we have what you might call 3 different political groups on the council. All 3 main political parties are represented, some in bigger numbers than others. And so, yeah, sometimes it is a little difficult to get a consensus. But with debate and so on, we can usually come to a point where we'll say, okay, we'll agree with this, we'll have to disagree with that. And you've got to respect the other person's point of view. I think that's something we've lost in society, respect and tolerance for another person's point of view, and the ability to debate something without thinking, right, they're wrong because they don't agree with me. So, yeah, I mean, also the aim of the parish council is very much to do the best for Saddleworth Parish and the people who live there. So we do hang our political hats up behind the door sometimes and just think, right, what's best for Saddleworth, and go with it.
So Bury is a pretty friendly place, actually, to be involved in local politics. So I know people who are councillors in other parts of the country, and some other parts of the country that are not too far away from Bury either, where politics is quite a nasty game, and people are not very civil to each other. Bury actually has a really nice tradition of a relative level of civility, and a good set of civic traditions. I also think Prestwich is a particularly lovely place to be involved in civic leadership. It's a community that's got an enormous amount of community organisation, if that makes sense, whether that's faith-based or issue-based in community groups or self-help groups. And also, I think that the thing that always makes Prestwich special to me is there are people from very different backgrounds, including different faith backgrounds. So, for example, the large Jewish community we have, and the non-Jewish community that we have, living right next to each other in a really harmonious and accepting way, hopefully. So I think that's a particular thing that makes Prestwich really special to me. Okay, so the biggest positive thoughts I have around Christmas are, I guess they're around family, but I think they're also around tradition. And I think those two things are quite linked together, if that makes sense. So I think Christmas is very much for me a time where people are together as a family. And I suppose it's a little bit of time out from the busyness that life can often bring, isn't it? It's a bit of time out with family. I think the fact that it's sometimes colder and things like that, it's a sort of an in time and keeping cozy together family time. And I suppose, if I think back to, I suspect what a lot of us feel about Christmas is based on our own experience. So my experience of Christmas was very much a family Christmas. It was a going to see the wider family and grandparents and cousins, and very, very many happy memories of that. And it's also quite interesting what different traditions families have at Christmas. So I'm always fascinated to learn the different things that families do at Christmas that are their own personal traditions that might be things that they do on certain days, like we always do this on Boxing Day, or we do this particular thing, the way we open our presents, or we have mushy peas with our Christmas dinner, which is something I discovered recently in another family. So I think it's quite fascinating that tradition's actually quite important. And I think as humans, that sort of tradition is really welcome, isn't it? So it's almost like repetition is reassuring. So the tradition, and there's a lot of Christianness in that tradition as well, obviously, isn't there? So the carols, the services, the message is a big part of that tradition. And I think that is really reassuring for people at Christmas. I think it's quite important to say that when I say family, I don't necessarily always mean, a traditional family, because I think sometimes people might spend Christmas with some close friends, or might always go around to their next door neighbours, but that's fine, isn't it? But it's a family in the broader sense, I guess, really. But that's a really welcome thing. But I suppose it's also obviously important to remember that not everybody has that, and sometimes the messaging around Christmas being a family time can actually be really can really exclude some people where that's not possible. So I think we just need to, even if that's what Christmas means to me, it might not be a reality for everybody.
Christmas means to me, family is one of the big things. Getting together with all the family. When our kids were little, we'd go to my sister's farm, and there'd be 14 of us as a base number. So you can imagine the chaos. But it was wonderful seeing all those people you maybe only saw a couple of times a year. And so family is a big one. Memories of all the Christmases past. Sounds a bit like the ghost of Scrooge, that. But, when I was little as a child, how Christmas has changed and evolved. It's become different, shall we say. But it's still very important. I mean, it's also a time of looking back, looking forward, rebirth with the baby. So I think, Christmas is still relevant today, even if people don't see it in a Christian light or a religious light. I think people do take the time to get together with family, to reassess. And I think that is really important. Yeah, I think lockdown has really crystallized what people think about Christmas and what it means to them. I think sometimes we just accept it, shrug our shoulders and carry on. But really, I think it's given us time to reflect what it really means, especially to a lot of people. As I say, family is the big thing. And that has, as I say, when they haven't been able to visit family when they want to, then that's important.
What does the word leadership make you think of? And does it naturally go hand in hand with a sense of servanthood? God incarnate came down to dwell on earth as a baby boy, in all of the vulnerability and helplessness of a newborn, and led us in ways of mercy, grace and humility. In what ways does that resonate with those who lead us in our communities and in this country today? In what ways are we challenged to consider how our everyday decisions affect people around us that we both know and don't know? How can the Church challenge leadership that is unjust and unequal today?
God of grace, we pray for all our leaders and people in authority.
May they be guided by your wisdom. May they show your compassion. May they follow your example of justice.
During this most challenging time, may they know the strength of your Spirit within them.
And bear hope to their communities. Amen.
Blessed are the leaders who are ruled by compassion and humility, for they will humbly serve people in the same way Jesus loved and served all people.